You know what's wild? I can design a banking app that handles millions of dollars in transactions, and that's considered easier than designing the health bar in a video game. And I'm not exaggerating. There's a reason why UI designers from tech companies often struggle when they switch to games, and why game UI designers are paid differently. Let me show you why. I've worked on both sides of this fence. I've designed apps, I've designed game interfaces, and the gap between these two worlds is massive. But here's the thing that bothers me. Nobody really talks about this in design school or boot camps. They act like UI is UI, right? You learn your Figma, understand your user flows, know your design principle, and you are good to go. Wrong. Game UI operates under completely different rules, and today I'm going to break down exactly why. Because if you are thinking about making the jump into game design, or you are just curious why your favorite games interface works the way it does, you need to understand these fundamental differences. And trust me, by the end of this, you will never look at a game menu the same way again. Let's start with the most basic difference that changes everything. When you design an app, your UI is the product. Think about it. Instagram interface is Instagram. Twitter's feed is Twitter. The interface is the entire experience. Your job as a designer is to make that interface as clear, efficient, and pleasant as possible. But in games, the UI is actively competing with the actual product. When someone plays God of War, they are not there for the health bar. They are there to fight monsters and experience the story. The UI is necessary, sure, but it's interrupting the fantasy. Every time a menu pops up, every time you see a button prompt, you are being reminded that you are playing a video game. You are being pulled out of the world. This creates a paradox that app designers never have to deal with. Your UI needs to be incredibly functional and readable, but also as invisible as possible. It's like being asked to design a sign that nobody should notice, but everyone needs to be able to read instantly. Let me give you a concrete example. In the banking app I mentioned earlier, when you are transferring money, you want confirmation dialogues, you want clear labels, obvious buttons, multiple verification steps. More UI is better because it prevents mistakes and builds trust. But in games like Elden Ring, imagine if every time you try to dodge an attack, a dialog box popped up saying, "Are you sure you want to dodge?" This will consume stamina. Press yes to confirm or no to cancel. You throw your controller through the screen, right? The game needs you to dodge. The game needs to show you your stamina. But it has to communicate all of these while keeping you immersed in fighting a dragon. That's an entirely different design problem. Here's something that will blow your mind. In app design, time doesn't really matter that much. Sure, you want your app to feel snappy and responsive. Nobody likes lags, but if it takes you 2 seconds or 5 seconds to tap through a menu in your food discovery app, the bugger isn't going to fight back. You can take your time, read the options, make a decision. In games, timing is everything, and I mean everything. When you are playing a competitive shooter like Valorant, the difference between seeing enemy health in zero point 0.2 seconds versus zero point 0.5 seconds is the difference between winning and losing a gunfight. When you are playing a fighting game like Street Fighter, you need to see your super meter status while tracking your opponent, watching for their next move, and executing your own combo. All of this is happening in frames. We are talking milliseconds. This means game UI designers have to think about information hierarchy in a way app designers never do. It's not just about what's most important, it's about what's most important right now, this very second, and that changes constantly. Take racing games. When you're doing 200 miles per hour in Forza or Need for Speed, you need to know your speed, your position in the race, and your racing line. But you need to know these things while processing the track ahead of you, which is the actual important part. The UI has to give you all this information in your peripheral vision without ever making you look away from the road. Compare that to something like Spotify. Yes, you want to see the song title and controls, but whether you glance at them now or 2 seconds from now makes zero difference. The song keeps playing, nothing is trying to kill you. There is no time pressure. And here's where it gets even more complex. In games, the UI timing requirements change based on the game state. In Skyrim, when you are in a menu organizing your inventory, time stop. You can take all day, but the instant you exit the menu and enter combat, suddenly every millisecond of UI response time matters because arrows are dynamic. One interface took completely different timing. Before explaining that in design technique, let's talk about something app designers take for granted: screen real estate. When you design a mobile app, you own the entire screen. All of it. Every pixel is yours to organize, structure, and fill with your interface. And when you need more space, just go and add another space, create another tab, problem solved. game designers, not hackers. In a game, the screen is already full. It's full of the actual game. The world you are exploring, the enemies you are fighting, the puzzles you are solving. That's what the player paid $60 to see. Your UI has to squeeze into whatever space is left over, and that space is usually tiny. Look at how Call of Duty handles this. You've got minimap in the corner, your ammo count in another corner, your health somewhere else, kill feed scrolling on the side, objective markers in the wall, and teammate status indicators. All of this has to fit around the most important thing, the actual view of the battlefield, where enemies could appear from any direction. Now, imagine trying to fit all the information from Amazon's checkout page into the corners of the screen while leaving 80% of the space completely empty for some reason. That's basically what game UI designers deal with every single day. And you can't just make things bigger. In competitive games especially, UI size is a constant battle. Players want information, but they also want to see the game work clearly. There are entire forum threads dedicated to arguing about whether health bars should be 5% bigger or smaller. People create custom UI just to show off a few pixels here and there. The Division 2 actually had to redesign their entire UI after launch because players complained the interface was blocking too much of the screen during firefights. They had to move information, resize elements, and redesign the entire system, not because the UI was bad at communicating information. It was actually quite good at that, but because it was taking up too much visual space. Here's another layer to this. Not only is space limited, but different parts of the screen have different values. In most games, the center of the screen is sacred territory. That's where the player's attention is focused. When the action happens, any UI element you put there better be really important and temporary, like a critical alert or a damage number. This is why most game UIs follow similar patterns. Important persistent info in the corners, temporary notifications near the center, but not blocking it. Contextual prompts near the objects they relate to. These aren't just conventions, they are solutions to the space problem that designers have actively figured out over decades. And here is something that makes game UI uniquely challenging: the sheer number of different contexts you have to design for. In a typical app, you've got maybe 10 to 20 different screens, right? Home screen, settings, profile, checkout, whatever. Each screen has a clear purpose, and users move between them deliberately. You tap a button, you go to a new screen. Linear, predictable. Games are chaos. Think about something like The Witcher 3. You've got the exploration UI which shows your health, minimap, and test markers. Then you enter combat and suddenly you need to see your adrenaline points and active signs prominently. Then you open your inventory, which is a completely different interface with hundreds of items. Then you go into crafting, which has its own system. Then dialogue, which changes the UI again. Then you hop on your horse and now you need different information. Then you go underwater and the UI changes again. That's not just 20 screens, that's more like 20 different UI states. And players need to be able to jump between them instantly while keeping track of where they are and what they were doing. And here's the really tricky part: all of these different contexts often need to show overlapping information, but prioritized differently. Your health is always important, but it's critically important in combat, moderately important during exploration, and barely matters when you are in melee. The UI needs to reflect this shifting priority without confusing the player about what changed or why. Red Dead Redemption 2 is fascinating to study for this reason. Rockstar actually designed the UI to fade in and out based on what you are doing. When you are just riding through the wilderness, most of the UI disappears. When you draw your weapon, the reticle appears. When you aim, more information shows up. When you enter Dead Eye, the entire UI changes to highlight target. This is contextual design on a level that app designers rarely have to think about. And you have to make all these transitions feel smooth and natural, not jarring, because if the player feels disoriented every time the UI changes, they will blame the game design, not the UI. Now we need to talk about something that doesn't exist at all in app design: diegetic UI. Diegetic means it exists within the wall of the story. And some of the most clever game UI design happens when designers figure out how to show you information through the actual game world instead of through traditional interface elements. Dead Space is the masterclass example of this. Isaac Clarke's health bar isn't in a corner or the screen,
Miguel?
it's on his spin. It's part of his suit. When you
don't
aim,
like this.
the reticle isn't floating in
Miguel?
space. It's a hologram
Where are
projected
you?
from his weapon. The inventory isn't a menu. It's a holographic display Isaac brings up in front of him. And the game doesn't pause when you open it, which means enemies can
Miguel?
still attack you.
Miguel?
This creates immersion that no app could ever need or achieve. You are not looking at an interface separate from the game. You are looking at Isaac's interface, the one he will actually see and use. Metro Exodus does something similar. Your watch shows mission objectives. Your lighter shows when you are hidden in shadows. You check your actual weapon to see how much ammo you have left. There is almost no traditional UI at all, yet you have all the information you need. But here's why this is so hard. You are essentially designing twice. You have to design the functional interface that communicates information clearly, and you have to design it as a believable object or system within the game world. It has to make sense as both, and you can't always use diegetic UI. Some information just doesn't fit in the world naturally. How do you show a minimap diegetically? Some games use an actual map item, but then you have to make the player pull it out and look at it, which breaks the flow. How do you show tutorial prompt diegetically? Is there really a sign floating in this ancient tomb telling you to press X to climb? This is why most games use a hybrid approach. Critical immersive information stays diegetic, but functional gameplay info uses traditional UI. The trick is making these two systems feel cohesive, like they belong in the same game. So let's bring this all together. Game UI designers have to create interfaces that are invisible but obvious, minimal but informative, beautiful but functional, simple but deep. They have to work across multiple platforms, input methods, languages, and accessibility needs. They have to perform well while competing for resources with the game itself. They have to teach without boring, guide without handholding, and please players with completely different expectations. And they have to do all of this while respecting the golden rule. The UI is not the product, it's in service of the product. It has to disappear when not needed and appear exactly when it is. Conveying information instantly while maintaining immersion, adapting the context constantly while remaining consistent enough that players always know where to look. This is why game UI is its own discipline. It's not just a different application of the same skills used in app design. It requires a fundamentally different way of thinking about interface
Got to be
design.
careful
If you're
here.
an app designer thinking about moving into games, I hope this gives you respect for the challenge ahead. And if you are a gamer, I hope this helps you appreciate all the invisible work that goes into those health bars and minimaps you barely notice. Because the best game UI is the UI you don't think about. And making something that complex feel that simple, that's harder than most people realize. If you are enjoying this video up to this point, I want you to do me a favor by clicking on the like and subscribe button.